What up, YouTube? It's your boy, ATrueHero. And I know what you're thinking. ATrueHero, it's been forever since you last posted. Where have you been? Well, let me share you some insight as to why I have not been posting frequently. For YouTube, in order to receive monetization status, which allows ad revenue on your YouTube videos, you need at least 1,000 subscribers and over 4,000 watch hours. Both of these criteria I've been able to achieve thanks to the love and support of all of you. Yet I'm still not monetized. And whereas I love to share insight at a high level, it becomes discouraging when I cannot even receive any monetary support for it. And I would never ask all of my fans for money, and that's why I always try to provide a service, either through replay analysis or tutoring. But to continue making these YouTube videos takes a lot of time and effort. So what I'm going to do, since it seems as though I cannot be monetized on YouTube, is I'm actually going to start a Patreon. For all of those who are willing to support, I would really appreciate it. But of course, you don't have to. Please just continue to watch the YouTube videos for free as you always have been doing. Now, with that out the way, let's take a look at my list that I ran for RBET rulers. And as you can see, I decided to go with Black Wings. Now, it was a very difficult choice to choose which deck to run for this event. So I listened to the advice from two duelists who I respect, Ludovico and Fraser Smith. And they both told me similar, practically the same thing, which is I should either roll a die or flip a coin to decide which deck to play for the event. So I rolled the die and the die landed on Black Wings. Now, throughout this event, I went 5 and 2, and I was one set shy of making top 8 because, as you can see, I came in 9th place. Anyway, I'm not going to ramble on too much longer. I hope that you can enjoy this tournament run, and don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Okay, so round 1. I'm up against eddiefiv or eddiefiv. When I take a look at my 6 cards, I realize that I opened up a dream hand, Whirlwind, Sirocco, and Collude. Now at this point, I have two options. I can go Whirlwind Collude to get the immediate plus, or I can wait a turn, go Heavy Storm, Whirlwind Sirocco. Ultimately, I decide to go pass, because if I go Whirlwind Collude, then it puts me in an awkward situation, whereas the next turn, if I want to go for a safe play, I have to Heavy Storm my own Whirlwind. So it's best just to pass, because very few decks in the Edison format can bring you down from 8,000 to 0. So I pass, my opponent goes Summon Gear Frame, and he adds Fortress. Now, by not committing any cards to the field, this also gives my opponent a read that I have Gores. So he attacks just for 18, he doesn't overextend, and he passes. I draw for turn into a second Sirocco, and I proceed to go off. Whirlwind Sirocco, add Gale, Gale half, pump up Sirocco, and run over. The reason why I do things in this order is because it does the most amount of damage while also playing around Gores. So, main phase 2, I synchro into Stardust and I set both Oppression and Deprison. So I'm in a very, very strong situation. Now, one thing to keep in mind, this tournament took place at different times for duelists throughout the world. But for me, ATrueHero, it took place at 3 a.m., which means at the beginning, I was not playing optimally. Now, my opponent summons Fortress, which is a really good card against Stardust, because if it successfully crashes against Stardust, then it not only will it take out Stardust, but due to its effect, it will also take out another card on my field. Now, I have two options. I can deprison, or I can activate Royal Oppression. Now, I decide to activate Deprison, and the reason being is because I didn't want my opponent to have spell or trap removal, like MST or Heavy Storm, and then if I try to bring back my Stardust during the end phase, since I have Oppression up, he Oppressions my own Stardust. So I decided to activate Deprison to get rid of Fortress once and for all. Now my opponent sets a monster and he passes, and I continue to generate advantage off the Whirlwind. So I go Summon Collude, add Blizzard, Stardust attack his face down. It's a Raikou. He decides to select my card, which is a little bit weird because I think it would have been better just to mill. That way Stardust can't negate and he can mill 3 cards in his graveyard. But at this point, I make a very crucial misplay. Now, he hasn't committed any cards to the field, no back rows, right? And only just has been summoning and setting monster, which gives a high indication that he has Gores. And since I used Deep Prison the turn prior, I have no out to a Gores. If I wait just one turn, then on my turn I could go summon Blizzard, Blizzard effect, bring back Gale, and then with Whirlwind I can also search out a Bayou. And now since I'll have both Blizzard, Qualute, and a Gale on the field, I can half a Gores and if necessary, even make a level 8, right? I can go 3 and 2 in the Catastor and then make Dark End. So Gores doesn't become a problem at all if I just wait one turn. But I got greedy. And this is something that I should not have done because all of my opponents were some of the best duelists in the entire world because you can't just come to rulers unless you were invited. So I misplayed here, and this misplay is very crucial because now he's able to run over my Stardust and take out my Qualute. So he summons Lila, takes out my Whirlwind. So I was actually still in a good spot, but now that Whirlwind's gone, things are going to be very difficult. However, I still have the option to go Blizzard into Gale, and Gale can still have his Gores. Blizzard can run over Lila, and although Gores will be stronger than both Gale and Blizzard, the following turn, I can summon Sirocco and beat over the Gores. Plus, I have Torrential, so I'm still not in the worst spot. But my opponent flips up, Dust Shoot, sends back the Blizzard. And now everything is starting to crumble downhill. All from the one misplay of attacking into an open field when there was no reason to. So I summon Sirocco, beat over his Lila, set Torrential, and I pass. Now my opponent knows that I have Torrential because he Dust Shooted me. So he makes a very smart play here. He sacrifices Gores and targets the set that is unknown. And the reason being is because he knows that my Sirocco cannot beat over his Caius. So if I activate Torrential, then I lose my entire field. The card he targeted, Torrential, and Sirocco. In most cases, when you summon a Caius, you want to target the Blackwing monster. But since my opponent Dust Shooted me and knows my entire hand, he made the best choice. So I think for a second, and I decide actually to not activate Torrential. This way, it keeps him off of aggression. So he attacks over my Sirocco, I take some damage, and I pass. And once again, because I have Torrential still set, he really can't commit any more cards to the board. Unfortunately for me, I draw Dark Arm, but at this point in time, I have 4 Darks in the grave. The 4th being the Sirocco that just went there previously. So I think, and I just decide to pass. The reason why I don't summon Sirocco is because Sirocco, if I pull into a card like Whirlwind or Bora or another Blackwing monster, I can pump up the monster and then run over the Caius, right? Even if I pull a Bayou. So I just take the damage. I know he can't commit to the field because I have Torrential. I draw a Bora for turn, summon Sirocco, special summon Bora, and I have 2 options. Either run over the Caius or attack the face down monster. So ultimately I choose to attack the face down monster because 1, it gets him out of brain control range, and 2, if I get him very, very low, I can pull a reversal. Even though this was my game to begin with, I threw it, and I can pull a reversal with a top deck Blizzard. So he takes a lot of damage, takes out my Torrential, which was really good for him. I set a bluff, and Eddie does not fall for it. He summons Gear Frame, summons Fortress, activates Pot of Avarice, attacks with everything, and that's game, right? So very well played by Eddie, all because I attacked into a Gores. So it's a very powerful card, and you have to play around it. Now, game 2, thankfully, my deck did not fail me. It gave me Whirlwind, Bora, and Dust Shoot, right? So at this point, the only thing I need to think about is what else should I set? I cannot set everything because then I just lose to Heavy Storm. So I decide to set Pulling the Rug. So I go Whirlwind, Bora, add Qualute. And another reason why I don't set Oppression is because I don't want to be in a position where I have to activate it since I just added Blizzard to my hand. Set 2 and pass, Dust Shoot him, send back the Hamster because that card is a problem. Here, he summons Gear Frame, which is exactly what I predicted, which is why I did not send back the Gear Frame. So I hit him with the Rug. He sets Bottomless, and I know it's Bottomless because I Dust Shooted him. I summon the Qualute in my hand, add Gale, special, attack with everything because I have nothing to fear. And at this point, main phase 2, I'm safe to set all my back rows. Because if he draws in a Heavy Storm, then it's a 2 for 2. Well, not a 2 for 2. It's actually going to be a 2 for 3. But even though I would go negative, -1 in this case, he doesn't have a follow-up. Because look at his hand. DD Warrior Lady, Machina Force, and Raikou. None of those 3 cards do anything against my field. Plus, I have Blizzard and the card that I would draw for turn. So even though Heavy Storm would generate him a lot of advantage, he would lose the game if he draws heavy. So I set everything and I pass, and he didn't even draw the heavy, he drew Caius, and he realizes that's the game, so he concedes. Now, game 3, I can tell that I'm rolling hot because I opened up Whirlwind Shura, right? So all I need is a card to destroy a back row. That way I can safely go Whirlwind Shura. And for turn, I draw Heavy Storm. So this was just my match. So I go Heavy Storm, get rid of his back row, MST, which was great because, like I said, I can successfully go Whirlwind Shura. And with this, I'm able to add Blizzard as a follow-up, Special Summon Gale, half, Shura run over, and I'm able to do my favorite Blackwing play, attack direct for 800, main phase 2, sync run to Armor Master, and then make Stardust and set D Prison. My opponent goes, he sets 3. For turn, I draw into a Shura, which was absolutely busted. Summon Shura, he activates Solemn because he just cannot afford that aggression. So I'm completely okay with that. And Eddie makes a very good play here. So I activate Value's effect, and he changed to Value, Compulse. So that sends Stardust out to the extra deck. And then when Silverwind hits the field, he's able to successfully bottomless. Now, my opponent doesn't have much of a follow-up. He sets a back row and he passes. I summon Blizzard. I don't have any targets, so I just bring back Shura. And I could have made Goyu Guardian, but the problem was I did not want to lose to a Dimensional Prison. Even though both bottomlesses are gone, Torrential and Dimensional Prison, all of the Dimensional Prisons rather, are not gone. So I just attacked direct for 13, and this is fine because I can protect the Shura with my D Prison set. He takes the damage and I pass, and he reveals his hand, shows me he doesn't have anything, and that's the set. So a very good set to Eddie. Unfortunately, for him, I opened up Whirlwind all 3 games, but that be used. And with that, on to the next, round 2. Okay, so round 2, I'm up against Carpath, a very talented duelist. Now, I do lose the RPS, and as you can see, Carpath is on fairies. So he summons Dialk, activates the effect, sets a back row, and passes. Taking a look at my opening 6 cards, it's quite good. I think about what to do and decide to set D Prison. Reason being, I don't want to give Carpath any unnecessary advantage by summoning Bora, running over his Alchemist, thus allowing him to add Shining Angel to his hand. So I set D Prison and I pass. Carpath activates Dialk's effect once again, swings for 18, I activate D Prison, and Carpath unexpectedly flips up Royal Decree, which is absolutely terrible for me because he drew Decree and I pulled into 3 different traps: Mirror Force, Bottomless, and D Prison. So after taking 18, Carpath sets a monster and passes. I draw into my 4th trap. So I think about what to do, and realizing that Dialk is slowly becoming a problem, I ultimately just decide to run him over with Bora. However, when I attempt to do so, Carpath responds with Honest. So I set Book of Moon to protect my life points and end my turn. Now Carpath, on his turn, activates Dialk effect once again and swings direct for 18. I choose not to activate Book of Moon here because it's not a lethal play. I summon Blizzard and pray that this effect goes through. That way I can go for a Brionic play. And it does. So I summon Brionic, I pitch all 3 of my traps, which are completely useless against Royal Decree, return all of his monsters, and attack direct for 23. Now, on Carpath's turn, he draws into Herald of the Orange Light, which was a perfect draw for him. Of course, he could have outed Bria with DD Warrior Lady, but this allows it so that Carpath doesn't lose tempo. So I draw for turn into Shura, activate Brio's effect, pitch Gores, and Carpath responds with Herald of the Orange Light. So I summon Shura, I hope the attack goes through, but it doesn't, and ultimately Shura winds up getting banished. Carpath draws for turn, sets a monster and passes. I draw into a Sirocco, summon it, attempt to attack. It's Raikou, so Sirocco gets destroyed. And then Karpath draws into Honest and sets it. Now I draw into another Shura, which is absolutely good. I summon Shura, I attack, and sadly for me, it was an Honest. So on Karpath's turn, he summons Caius and targets the back row, which I was very happy with because now I can chain my back row, which is Book of Moon, put the Caius face down, run it over Ashura, get Vayu, Synchro main phase 2 into Catastor or Magical Android, and also summon Vayu, Armwing, through Vayu's effect. However, things begin to go downhill the moment this Book of Moon resolves because Karpath activates Christian's effect. He special summons Christian and activates its effect. So now this game is pretty much over because there are very few outs that I can draw to clear the board of a Christian, especially behind a Royal Decree. So I draw for turn, I draw into my fifth trap, Torrential. So with that, this game is just over. So I move on into game two. Now, game two, I open up quite well. And I think about what to do, and I just decide to set both traps and pass. Now, on Karpath's turn, he sets a monster and sets two back rows as well, and he passes. So at this point, I have two different options. I can either make Stardust or I can make Darkhan. So I summon Sirocco, special summon Bora, special summon Gale, pump up Bora. And Bora's attack is now 5k. Now, there's merit to making Darkhan because against fairies, Darkhan is absolutely broken. And there's merit to making Stardust as well because as you can see, I have Dark Armed Dragon in my hand. So Stardust can ensure that Dark Arm successfully drops the following turn. Not to mention, by making Stardust, I can also protect my 3-card invested Bora, right? Sirocco, Gale, and Bora himself. Because this is game 2, which means Karpath could have likely sided into cards such as Mirror Force or Deep Prison. Though he does main Royal Decree, even myself, when I main Royal Decree, I keep the blowout cards because they're so impactful to the game. So I decide to go for the safe play and make Stardust. I attack, Karpath takes a lot of damage, and I am feeling very comfortable. Because I have Stardust, Mirror Force, Icarus, plus Blizzard Dark Arm in my hand. So it's looking like this game is a wrap. However, Karpath flips up his face down Mind Control. So I respond with Icarus because I can't afford to lose my cards, and Karpath chains Royal Decree. So although things aren't great because of Royal Decree, it's not the end of the world. So what Karpath decides to do is to summon a tuner, Orange Light, Synchro and Brionic Pitch. Now he has 4 fairies. He drops Christia, returns Honest to his hand, and attacks direct with both. So I am in a terrible situation. There are very few cards that I can draw to out this board. And what I would need is either a Brain Control, a Mind Control, or a Book of Moon. So I draw for turn, and I draw into Trap Dust Shoot. So with that, that will be the set. So definitely well played by Karpath. And with that, on to the next, round 3. All right, so round 3, I'm up against woahderick. And from this point on, it is the lifeline of my tournament run at RBT Rulers. Since it's a double elimination event, if I lose any more sets, I will be eliminated or kicked out from RBT Rulers. Now, my opening hand is quite good. Double Kalut, Solemn, Icarus, Heavy, and Whirlwind. So I have 2 options. I can go Whirlwind Kalut, or I can pass. Now, I choose to pass for 2 reasons. 1, I don't know what deck my opponent is playing. And 2, since I have Heavy Storm, that means on my following turn, I can go Heavy and Whirlwind into a Blackwing safely without having to worry about any harm. So that's the play I decide to go with. Now, I quickly find out I'm up against the mirror match as my opponent opens up one of the best, if not the best, openings for Blackwings, Whirlwind Shura. So my opponent adds Bora, which is telling of his hand, because that tells me he already has either a Kalut and or a Blizzard in his hand. He swings direct for 18 and he passes. On my turn, I draw into Bora, which was absolutely perfect. So I don't play Heavy Storm. Reason being, I have Icarus attack, so there's no reason to waste my Heavy Storm on this 1-for-1 exchange. So I go Whirlwind Bora, add Gale, Special Gale, have Shura, Synchro into Armor Master. Now, of course, I could have attacked, and then if my opponent has Collude, I could have colluded back, but it's a waste of a collude. It's better to make Armor Master because I can serve more cards. It allows me to summon a Collude on my following turn, not to mention by leaving more Blackwings out on the field, such as Bora and Collude, assuming I don't Synchro summon, I become vulnerable to Sirocco. And against the mirror match and Value Turbo, you have to be aware of the power of Sirocco. Sirocco gains the attack of all Blackwings monsters on the field. So even if I had double Collude, it would be very problematic just to get over one card. So I make Armor Master, I run over Hishura, I set Solemn and Icarus, and I pass. Now at this point, I have very few worries outside of Heavy Storm. Because if he Heavy Storms me, then I have to Solemn, and I'll bring my life points to a very low total. Now it's unlikely he has Heavy Storm because he played Whirlwind, and generally Blackwing players play Heavy Storm before playing their Whirlwind, even though in my case I have Heavy Storm in my hand. But this is just the general flow of the game, because you don't want to be in a position where you have to Heavy Storm your own Whirlwind. Now, my opponent goes Summon Blizzard, which is a problem, because had my opponent summoned any other monster, I just would have went Icarus attack immediately, because that way Whirlwind doesn't resolve and their monster gets destroyed. But in Blizzard's case, it's a bit awkward, because if I Icarus attack immediately, yes, Whirlwind doesn't resolve, yes, Blizzard is destroyed. However, Blizzard's effect will still resolve, so he'll have Shura on the field. And at that point, if my opponent has Icarus attack, now I'm in a bad situation to lose my entire field. So if I wait and I allow him to bring out his Shura with Blizzard's effect, he gets to add a card with Whirlwind from his deck to his hand. So I don't want any of these two scenarios to occur. So I activate Solemn Judgment. And I'm not too worried because, one, this puts him off a Dark Arm because he only has 2 darks in the grave. If the Blizzard effect went through and he was able to make like a Bryonic and go Prio pitch, he could put the 3rd dark in his grave. So I don't have to worry about Dark Arm. 2, I don't have to worry about Icarus attack because he doesn't have any monsters on the field. So Blackwings, when you stop their summon, generally their turn ends. And if my opponent happens to have Brain Control, I have Icarus. So he'll go Brain and I can go Chain Icarus, get rid of your Whirlwind and target your Brain Control. So in this case, Solomon the Blizzard was the best play. Now, my opponent sets a back row and he passes. I draw for turn, Blizzard. And since I drew Blizzard, I take a look at my graveyard and I realize that that actually allows me to have game. Because previously, if I would have end phase Icarus, it would not have been game, based off the cards I have in my hand, which were at the time Double Collude and Heavy Storm. Because my best play would have been to summon Collude, Gale's already in the graveyard, so I can search out a Blizzard, attack direct for 14. That's it. He's at 64. However, since I drew Blizzard for turn, now I can go for game. So I take a second to do the math. I realize I have game. I go Icarus, get rid of both of his cards, Blizzard's effect, add value to my hand, special summon Bora, summon Bryonic, pitch value, return Whirlwind, summon Silverwind, attack, double Collude, game. And I didn't even need double Collude, just a single Collude was enough. So with that, that brings game 1 to a close. Now, game 2, unknowing to me, my opponent did not open up so well. However, I also did not open up very well either. Now, the problem with playing triple value is that you see them more often. But I actually think it's the way to go because when you think about the decks that have been topping recently, it's Value Turbo. And they're playing 3 values. Granted, Blackwing's values are different decks, but value is so good because it mitigates Blackwing's biggest weakness, which is monster shortages. Not to mention, value eats cards like Deep Prison, which your opponent often would use on your bigger and stronger monsters, such as your synchros, your shores, your boars, etc. And even if he doesn't eat a D prison, your opponents don't want to play more powerful cards against it, such as Torrential, Mirror Force, etc. So 800 winds up becoming 16, winds up becoming 24, and so on and so forth. So value at 3, in my opinion, is the correct number to play in Black Wings. So I summon value, I attack, and as we can see here, my opponent doesn't have anything. So the attack just goes through. So since he has 3, I'm not afraid to set 2. Because Black Wings often play Yada, and I didn't want my opponent to flip up like double Yada and then summon a Black Wing, attack, and things begin to go downhill for me. My opponent summons Kalut, he attacks, asks him if damage is fine, he says okay, and I Kalut him right back. He sets a back row and he passes. So since he has so many back rows, I've agreed, since none of them are doing anything, that one of those back rows is either Starlight Road or Solemn. And at this point, since my opponent has 4 back rows, I have no problem with also setting both of my back rows. Now, on my opponent's turn, he activates Brain Control. And I think for a second about what to do. Because I have a read, my opponent has Icarus attack of his own. So he'll go Brain Control, attack, Icarus, and I'll lose so many cards. So I cannot afford to lose all of those cards. So in response to his Brain Control, activate Icarus attack. Now, if my opponent flips Starlight Road, I cannot deal with a Stardust with this hand at all. So Starlight Road can only be activated if 2 of your opponent's cards are going to be destroyed. So instead of destroying 2 cards with my Icarus attack, I only destroy 1. I target one of his back rows, and I target another one of my back rows. And the back row that I targeted was actually my Dust Tornado. That way I can chain my Dust Tornado and still take out 2 of his back rows without having to worry about Starlight Road. Even my opponent said, nicely played. Now, at this point, I am in a very good position because I have 2 real traps, I have Bottomless and Mirror Force, I have Vayu in the grave, I have Sirocco in hand, I have 3 darks, everything is lining up perfectly, and my opponent doesn't have a follow-up. So, I draw for turn, Blizzard. I summon Blizzard, and I begin to go on the offensive, but my opponent activates Book of Moon, so I'm forced to end my turn. End phase MST takes up my Bottomless, and I'm not worried at all because I still have Mirror Force. But then my opponent goes Heavy Storm, and he special summons Cyber, normal summon Blizzard, activate the effect, makes Android, swings over both of my cards. So now the advantage has shifted once again to my opponent. But look at my graveyard. Once again, I have 3 darks, and there's so many cards I can pull in this situation to win. Whirlwind, Bora, Gale, Dark Arm, right? Just to name a few. Brain Control. So I draw for turn, and unfortunately I get none of those cards, right? I draw for turn, and I draw into Bottomless. So I think about what to do. I realize I'm at 8,000, so I just set Bottomless to pass, because on my next turn, I can still draw into all of the cards that I just listed to win the game. So my opponent draws for turn, he attacks direct with Cyber Dragon and Android, he sets a back row, and he passes, and I draw on the Bora. Now Bora, of course, came 1 turn too late, because now my opponent has a back row. So the odds of the attack going through are a bit less. So I special summon Bora, I pump up, I attack over the Android, and my opponent D-prisons. Unfortunate for me. My opponent draws for turn. Thankfully, he cannot put more aggression onto the board, so he just attacks over my Sirocco, I take damage, and he attacks me direct with Magical Android. This brings me down to 1,000. Now, I still have a ton of great cards I can pull at this point to pull me out of a bad spot, because I have Vayu and Sirocco in the grave to make Armwing, and Armwing can beat over the Cyber Dragon. So if I pull into another Blizzard, then I can even go Blizzard into Catastor and then take out his entire field. So I draw for turn, but sadly, once again, I draw into a Whirlwind. 1 turn too late. So I summon Armwing, I attack over his Cyber Dragon, and things are still not too bad for me. Because if I pull into a Blackwing, then I could go Whirlwind plus the Blackwing and still come out on top. Considering the fact my opponent can only do 100 points of damage, and since I have Bottomless set, the odds of him summoning a monster that could beat over Armwing are very low. So my opponent draws for turn, and he runs over my Armwing. So the moment of truth, I draw for turn and I draw into Gores. One of the worst draws possible, especially after already having two set. So despite the fact that I played as best as I could, I still lost game two. So with that, we go into game three. Now, taking a look at my game three hand, I do not get Whirlwind, but I look at it and the first thing I think to myself is playable. This hand is more than playable. I have every card that I need in order to win the game, especially one of those cards being Dark Arm Dragon. So I think and I set Dust Tornado and I pass. The reason why I only set Dust Tornado is because I don't want my opponent to go Whirlwind Blackwing because I cannot handle too much aggression at this point. Plus, if my opponent sets any back rows during the end phase, I can set my Icarus attack. So he goes end phase, I go activate Dust Tornado second effect to set Icarus attack. On my turn, I can either summon Sirocco or set value depending on the game state. So I set Dust Tornado and I pass. My opponent sets a card to each zone and he passes. So there's no point activating Dust Tornado's second effect. So here I think about what to do. Now I have a read my opponent set value because generally in Black Wings, the only cards you set are cards like value or Snowman Eater. And I don't think Snowman Eater is actually the best side card in the Blackwing Mirror match. So I summon value and I attack. And unfortunately for me, it is Shura. And the reason why this is so bad is because I can't even set Icarus. Because if I set Icarus, then I can no longer drop Gores. And that would mean my opponent can just do a lot of damage to my life points. So I'm forced just to pass. So I pass, my opponent switches Shura to attack, he runs over my value, he gets a value of his own, he attacks the wreck for 8, and I think whether or not to drop Gores, but my life points are so high and it's just not worth it, especially if my opponent has Icarus attack. So I just pass. I draw for turn, I draw into Kalut. So I think about what to do, and I have several different plays, right? I can summon Sirocco, or I can summon Blizzard. But I don't want to get bottomless. So I decide actually to summon Kalut. So I summon Kalut, I attack over his value. Thankfully, he doesn't have Kalut of his own. I set Icarus and I pass. And here, if my opponent goes end phase Icarus, assuming he has it, I'm completely okay with that trade because now my Gores can drop safely. But he does nothing. On his turn, he attacks. I Icarus, I take out both of his cards, and my opponent sets a monster and he passes. I take a look at my graveyard. I see I have 2 darks. And I was like, well, if I get to 5 darks, actually, that's game. Because if I get to 5 darks, I can banish value Sirocco, go down to 3 darks, special summon Dark Arm. So I summon Blizzard, and I don't activate his effect. I special summon Bora, make Brionic, activate Brio's effect, pitch Sirocco to return his set monster. And now, just as planned, I have 5 darks in the grave. So I banish Sirocco and Bayou to make Arm Wing, special summon Dark Arm, attack with everything, and that is the set. So very well played by woahderick, and with that, on to the next, round 4. Okay, so round 4, I'm up against Corinna, and she does get to go first for this set. Now, she's known for playing Monarchs or the Hero Frog deck. She sets a monster and passes. My opening 6 is quite good. I summon Sirocco, special summon Double Bora, pump, attack, run over her face down Dupe Frog, and she searches out a Swamp Frog. In hindsight, this play was too committal because it loses to 1 card, Absolute Zero. Although she doesn't have hero access, Bottomless would not help me in preventing a Miracle Fusion from being activated. Because think about what she could do. If she has Stratos and I bottomless the Stratos, Stratos can search out Prodigy. Then she can go Special Prodigy, activate Miracle Fusion. If she already has Prodigy, well, Prodigy can't be bottomless, so she could just go Special Summon Prodigy, activate Miracle Fusion. And if she has Alias or Ocean, she can simply set those cards and activate Miracle Fusion. And then I lose my entire board. So this play was too committal. Not to mention, by keeping Bora in my hand, it allows me more cards to search off Black Whirlwind if I were to draw it my following turn. So I set Bottomless and I pass. Now Corinna draws the perfect card for turn. which was Ocean. Because before drawing Ocean, she actually did not have any hero access. Yes, she does have Malicious Edge in her hand, but think about how much she would have to neg herself to summon that. She would have to go pitch Substitute, special summon Swamp Frog, sacrifice Swamp Frog for Malicious Edge. A Malicious Edge specifically says it can only be summoned with one tribute face up, which means if she were to summon Malicious Edge in that way, I would just go bottomless. And now she's lost Swamp Frog, she's lost Substitute, she's lost Malicious Edge, and she's also lost, well, not lost Miracle Fusion, but she can't activate her Miracle Fusion. So drawing Ocean was exactly what she needed in this point in time. So she goes pitch Ocean, special summon Swamp, send Treeborn, activate Miracle Fusion, summon 0, and I activate Bottomless. The reason why I activate Bottomless instead of Pollute when she attacks over one of my Black Wings is because she doesn't have any additional heroes in her grave, which will make it more difficult to activate and resolve future Miracle Fusions. So Corinna Substitute out of her hands, attack direct for 11, and ends on a sublock with a back row. So I draw for turn, and I draw into D Prison. So I think about what to do, and I ultimately decide in setting both back rows, because I have a read she doesn't have Heavy Storm because she set a back row. And in Frogs, there's really not much of a reason to set back rows, especially, look, she has Treeborn access, so I don't think that she has Heavy Storm. So I set both of my back rows and I pass, and at this point, the game state becomes draw and pass. So I think about what to do, and I just draw and I pass, and I continue this until on her turn, she summons Ryza. Luckily for me, she actually hits the chainable card, which was Torrential. So I activate Torrential, and the Torrential goes through, and now I realize that I have to put some aggression on the board. So I summon Shura, and I attempt to attack, but she activates Roar. I set all my back rows. She goes end phase MST, she hits my Icarus attack, and she goes Heavy Storm. Now, of course, I could have Solemn this Heavy Storm, but if I Solemn, my life points become so low that I die to almost anything. So I just let the Heavy Storm go through. She summons Caius, and I take 34, which is really good. And on my turn, I draw into a Lure. So I'm stuck in a difficult predicament, because on the one hand, I can actually just go summon Kalut, special summon Gale, half Synchro Goyu attack, and take his Caius. Or I can activate a Lure of Darkness. So I actually thought long and hard about what to do, and ultimately I decided to activate a Lure of Darkness. Reason being is because, look at my graveyard, I have 3 Darks. So I was like, I'm going to Allure in an attempt to pull Dark Arm Dragon. So I Allure, and I don't get Dark Arm, but what I do get is Black Whirlwind. So that works out perfect. But even thinking about the card to banish was quite difficult, because if I banish Gale, then I could go Whirlwind Kalut and add Blizzard. But if I banish Kalut, I can add Vayu, and Vayu is good because I have Sirocco in the graveyard, and Gale can also run over and attack his Caius. But I decide it's better actually to go for the Blizzard play, especially because both MST and Heavy Storm is gone, which means my Deep Prison and my Whirlwind will be able to safely stay on the field. So I go Whirlwind, Kalut, I add Blizzard, I set Deep Prison, and I pass. She goes Brain Control, and I'm thinking to myself, well, that's probably just game, because if she summons any Monarch, then I'll pretty much just lose. Because she can just go sack, Monarch, hit the back row, and attack direct for both. Because Torrential's gone, right? So she doesn't have a fear about Torrential, and one of the bottomlesses are gone too. So the odds of this being a second bottomless are quite low. However, she just goes attack. And I'm like, okay, that's fine. She attacks again, and I prison. And main phase 2, she summons Stratos, adds Alias, sets Mirror Force, and pass. And I draw into Kalut. However, drawing into Kalut isn't really relevant in this situation because I have game. So I just go summon, add Vayu to my hand, add Bora, make Brionic, pitch his back, pitch Vayu from my hand to return her back row, banish Vayu Sirocco, and attack with everything, and that's game. So somehow, despite everything, I managed to win game 1. So game 2, I look at my opening hand, and once again, it's pretty good. I don't have Whirlwind, but it's fine. Corinna just goes the standard turn one frog play, summon Swamp Frog, Sentryborn, set a back row, and pass. Two back rows, rather. So I summon Shura, I attempt to attack, it gets bottomless. I'm okay with that because I have double Shura. So Corinna summons Stratos, a really good draw off the top. Attacks the wreck for 18, which is not an issue at all because now I can summon Sirocco and also deck debut her. So I summon Sirocco, attack over her Stratos. I set all three and I pass. And the reason why I set all three is because I had to read that she did not have Heavy Storm because she set two back rows her opening turn. However, she goes and face MST. And that's completely fine with me because the main card that I wanted to resolve was deck debut. Because as long as I have knowledge of her hand, then I can play optimally this game. So she brings back Treeborn, and I think about what to do, and I chain to Treeborn's effect and activate deck debut. The reason why I chain to Treeborn effect is because I want her to summon Treeborn, because look at my hand. I have Shura. And with Sirocco in the grave and a Treeborn on her field, if this Shura attacks goes through, I can get value and I can become in a really offensive position. So I chain to Treeborn's effect. Also, I don't want her to summon a Monarch, right? She can still summon a Monarch on the back row, but that's fine. It's not the end of the world. Because I have, once again, Qualut and Shura. So I chain deck debut to Treeborn's effect. I get to see her entire hand. I tell her that Treeborn's still there. I know for a fact now that she set Threatening Roar. So I bait out her Threatening Roar by summoning Shura. And she draws for turn the perfect card, which was Caius, right? Because I knew she had Brain Control, Molly Edge, and Heavy, and all three of those cards don't do anything. But Caius puts me in a very, very awkward situation. Because all Corinna has to do here is go sacrifice Treeborn for Caius, banish my Shura, and I take so much damage. But she misplays. She activates Heavy Storm. And by activating Heavy Storm, it actually allows me to go Icarus. But I do understand Corinna's reasoning. She did this because she was playing around pulling the rug. And pulling the rug is a very common side deck card that Blackwing side in against Monarchs. So I definitely understand. So anyway, I Icarus here, and it allows me to put my Shore in the graveyard and me not to have to deal with the pressure of a Caius. And at this point, the game just becomes draw and pass. I draw on the Whirlwind, which is perfect. So I go Whirlwind, Qualut, and I add Blizzard. And I think about what to do, and I decide to attack because I'm not worried about her dropping a Caius. Because I know for a fact that when she Caiuses, she's going to target the Whirlwind because that card will generate me too much advantage over time. So she runs over the Qualut, and she's not going to expect a second Qualut. So I Qualut her again, and I draw for turn another Whirlwind. That was absolutely crazy. So I keep up the offensive pressure. Whirlwind Blizzard. I search out a value again, bring back Shura, summon Brielle, pitch, return, and this is perfect game, 6,000. So definitely well played by Corinna. Very unfortunate that I was drawing Whirlwinds like crazy off the top, but I mean, it's Yu-Gi-Oh! And with that, on to the next, round 5. All right, so round 5. I'm up against GGB0789, and my opponent does get to go first. He sets two back rows and passes. So I summon Vayu, attack, set two back rows of my own, and I pass. Now my opponent flips up Yada. And the moment he flips up Yada tells me that he's on Blackwings. Now this card, Yada, has been popularized due to Ludovico, who first played it in his Blackwing build. And since that time, other recent Blackwing builds have also been maining the legacy of Yata-Garasu. Now, while the card has seen a lot of success, I personally think it's a bit overrated. Reason being is because, yes, it's cute when you get to resolve it against cards like MST, Heavy Storm, or Icarus Attack. More times than not, you activate it just to draw a card. And that's exactly what's happening in this scenario. My opponent doesn't have any good plays, so he's forced to activate Yada to draw himself a card. Now, he does draw into a very good card, which is Black Whirlwind. However, he doesn't want to go Whirlwind Bora or Whirlwind Sirocco because he doesn't want the Whirlwind to get destroyed by Icarus Attack. So he chooses just to pass. I special summon Bora because I realize I'm playing against the Blackwing Mirror match and I need to put aggression on the board. So I attack with both, and my opponent activates Deep Prison and he banishes the value. So he takes 17 and passes. Now I am in a bit of an uncomfortable spot because at this point, since my opponent has used all their back rows, if my opponent goes Heavy Storm, summons Roko, pump, attack, then I cannot play out of this spot because even Qualut won't save me, and I would only have Bottomless and Shura in my hand. So it's a really dangerous spot to be in. Fortunately for me, my opponent does not have Heavy Storm. So what my opponent decides to do is to play around Icarus attack by summoning Sirocco, pumping, and attack. But I have Dimensional Prison. So his Sirocco rather, gets banished. He sets a back row and he passes. Now we can see in the replay that this black row is actually a bluff, but I understand the reasoning for setting it. It's because 55 is not a tall order for Blackwings. So if I overextend, then I can easily knock out 55 points of damage. Not with the current hand that I have, but with most typical Blackwing hands. So I draw for turn a Book of Moon, and not wanting to run into Mirror Force or Torrential, I just swing direct for 17. He takes the damage, and I set a back row and I pass. Now on my opponent's turn, he realizes that his life points are getting lower, so he has to make a play. So he goes Whirlwind Bora, and I go Bottomless. He sets Icarus, and I think about what to do, and ultimately I just decide to attack once again with Bora, and since he has Whirlwind and a sack card, I realize that it's likely he doesn't have Heavy Storm. So I attack direct for 17, I set Book of Moon, and I pass. Now on my opponent's turn, he goes set a monster and ends his turn. During his end phase, I go Icarus, I take out the two unknowns, his set back row, and his face down value. He chains Icarus of his own to clear my face down Book of Moon, and with that, that's the end of game one, because I reveal the Shura and Qualut in my hand, and my opponent concedes. So we go to game two. So my opponent once again starts for game two. And this time my opponent opened up Great Starter, Whirlwind and Bora, and he adds Qualut to his hand and sets a back row. Now, I have two cards that I can play around. I can choose to play around Icarus attack, and by doing so, I summon Sirocco, pump, and run over. Or I could choose to play around Bottomless Trap Hole, and by doing so, I can set value and set 2 to 3 back rows and pass. So I take a moment to think what the back row likely is, and I decide to play around Bottomless. So I set value and I set all 3 of my back rows. And the reason why I don't set 2 is because I don't want him to go end phase Icarus and hit every back row that I have. And then on his turn, he summons a monster and is free to do anything he wishes because I don't have any protection. So at least this way, if my opponent does go end phase Icarus, I have at least one back row remaining that can keep me in the game. But once again, my read wasn't that his back row is Icarus. My read was that his back row is Bottomless, which is why I went for this play. Now, when my opponent enters his battle phase, then it hits me. Yes, I made the correct read. So I activate Deep Prison, but surprise, surprise, it wasn't Bottomless. It was indeed Icarus attack. So I am about to go severely neg on this trade. So he targets both of my back rows, and I'm forced to chain Icarus and take out his Whirlwind. So at the very least, even though I lost a lot of cards in that exchange, I took out his Whirlwind, which would have netted him advantage over time. So my opponent sets a back row and he passes. I draw an MST, but I don't really have a strong follow-up because I don't want to go Blizzard into a value, so I just decide to end my turn. My opponent summons Blizzard of his own, attacks direct for 13, and he passes. Now, to me, that play is a bit unorthodox because he knows he's up against the Blackwing Mirror match. And look at his back row. It's just a Dust Tornado. It's not a real back row. So if I have Sirocco, then I could just summon Sirocco, pump, attack, and he's going to take a lot of damage. So I had MST, and then we can even see his back row is not real. He changed it so that he can set a back row of his own, but I'm not worried about it because he can't activate it because it was just set this turn by Dust Tornado. I summon Sirocco, I pump and attack, and I run over his Blizzard. Once again, if my opponent were to had summoned like rank 6, not rank 6, but level 6, such as Goyu Guardian or even Brionic, then this Sirocco doesn't do anything, right? I'd have to go Sirocco, attack, and then Colute out of my hand, which is very committal. 2 cards to take out his 1 card Blizzard, essentially. However, my opponent kept the monsters on the field, which worked out for me. So I was able to run over the Blizzard, and he took 37 points of damage, which is really good. On my opponent's turn, he switches the Bora, attacks, and Colutes, but he doesn't anticipate on me having Colute of my own. So I Colute right back, he takes 300, and I think about what to do. Because here, actually, I have game. I can summon Blizzard, get back Colute, and make either Android or Catastrophe, or attack direct with both, and that's 4,000. And the cool thing is, even if my opponent has Torrential, I have Value Sirocco in the grave. But I decided to just play a bit passive because my life points are so high. So unless my opponent has Dark Arm Dragon, it's very unlikely that I'll lose. So I attack, he takes 2,000, and on his turn, he goes Summon Sirocco, Special Summon Bora, Pump, and attack. So I have nothing to do to stop that, so I take damage of my own. And on my turn, I draw Bottomless. So I think about what to do because I have a bunch of different options. I can go for Black Rose, but I'm a little bit afraid of going for Black Rose because I have to put 2 cards on the field and my opponent could just go Icarus. Or I can just go Brain Control, Pump, and attack. So that's exactly what I decided to do. So I go Brain Control, Pump, attack, and my opponent activates D-Prison. Now, this is actually telling of what his back row is not. So now I know his back row is not Mirror Force because in the Blackwing mirror match, or even when you're playing against Value Turbo, you want to keep your Vayus and Siroccos in the graveyard, not in the banish zone. So because he deprisoned this attack, then I have a read that one of his 2 back rows is not, or rather both of his back rows are not Mirror Force. So I think about what to do, and I realize that 22 is quite low, so I need to put a monster on the board. But I don't want to summon Blizzard because Blizzard is a win condition. So I summon Armwing and I set a back row. And although this does play into Icarus attack, I'm completely okay with this board getting Icarus because I'm at 22. So the only way that he's doing 22 off the top is by drawing a Blizzard. So I set Bottomless, end phase, he goes Dust Tornado, he draws, sets a back row, and he ends. Now I think about what those back rows could be. So I special summon Bora in an attempt to bait out a Bottomless or Torrential, and I see Bottomless. Now, like I said before, this back row is not Mirror Force because he would have used it when I attacked his Sirocco. So I have a read that that back row is either another D-Prison or it could potentially be Torrential Tribute. I was like, either way, I need to do what I can to clear his board. So I go Special Summon, Normal Summon Bora, Special Summon Colute, make Android, attack, and my opponent concedes after attacking with Android. So well played by GGB07, and with that, on to the next, round 6. Okay, so round 6, I'm up against Sam. And Sam is one of the most proficient Value Turbo players within the Edison community. So he sets a back row and he passes. And I open up Whirlwind, Double Shora, Dark Arm. So I go Whirlwind Shora. My opponent goes Bottomless, but it's not a big deal due to the other Shora in my hand. But this forces Sam to actually activate Heavy Storm because Whirlwind provides too much pressure against him. Now, when he ends his turn with nothing on his field, it's very telling of what he has in his hand. Gores. Because Value Turbo has a ton of cards that they can constantly commit to the field. They can set hamsters, they can set Rykos, they have a ton of traps such as Mirror Force, D-Prison, Royal Oppression, even though these days, many Value Turbo decks are not main decking Royal Oppression because it's not effective against the top decks of the meta. So I'm not worried about Sam dropping Gores because I have an answer. And my clapback to his Gores is Gores of my own. So I summon Shora and I attack. And he drops Gores. Not to mention, in order for this Gores drop to even be relevant, Sam would need to have a Caius. Because if he doesn't have Caius, then when he attacks over my Shora, I can simply just Colute. So I pass, and on Sam's turn, he does indeed summon Caius. But that's perfectly fine because, once again, my backup plan was to always drop Gores. So he attacks direct with 24 and 27, and I drop Gores. Now, of course, this caught Sam by surprise because traditionally, Gores is not played in Value Turbo or in Blackwings. And although there have been a few sets throughout today where I pull Gores at the wrong time, Still, Gorz is worth playing in each and every deck because he's so powerful that at times he can even solo games by himself. So my opponent sets a back row and he passes. I draw into a lure and I lure the value away. So I think about what to do. I switch both of my monsters to attack, and ultimately I decide to summon Bora. And the reason being is because I want to fill up my graveyard with 3 darks as quickly as possible, just in case this board gets broken. And one way to get 3 darks is by summoning Bora and colluding over his Gorz. Not to mention, my opponent's Gorz has an attack of 27. Although my token stats are quite high, 27, 27, I would have to crash out the token, so I would lose this token, whereas I can just summon Bora and collude over it and keep my 27, 27 token. So that's exactly what I do. I run over his Caius, I Bora into his Gorz, and I collude. I attack direct for 27, I set Book of Moon, and I pass. Also, this play conveniently puts him at 2,800 points of damage. So if he outs this board and I survive, then Dark Arm will kill him. So on my opponent's turn, he summons value and activates Torrential. Now it makes sense why he didn't Torrential on my Bora summon, because if he did that, he would only have 2 darks. But by doing it this way, he has 3 darks, and he's able to capitalize, drop Dark Arm, and go for game. So he summons Dark Arm, he pryos and activates the effect, and I just chain Book of Moon. So my opponent sets 2 back row and passes. I draw into Icarus, which is irrelevant here because I had 3 darks just as planned. I pop his Dark Arm because that's the immediate threat. I hit the Mirror Force and my opponent instantly concedes. So that brings game 1 to a close. Now, game 2. Sam gets to start this game as well. So Sam decides to set a card to each zone. Now, on my turn, I have an option. I can either summon Sirocco or I can summon Shura. So ultimately, I decide to summon Sirocco because Sirocco plays around my opponent having Hamster. So I summon Sirocco, and unfortunately for me, it gets bottomless. So I could set an Icarus here, but if my opponent has Raikou, then it's just a free Raikou pop. So it's better just to wait. Now, Sam summons Grepher, he pitches Necro, and he pitches Value. So this actually tells me that this set is a Raikou. Because in my mind, if my opponent has Hamster, he would have flipped it up to get his Raikou and attacked for an additional 1100 points of damage. So my opponent passes, and I realize how important it is to get Grepher off the field. So I summon Sirocco, and I special summon Bora, and I attempt to run over his Grepher to get the plus with Shura's effect, but my opponent activates Gardener, which is perfect. So now I can either crash out with Bora, or I can set Icarus attack and Icarus him on his draw phase. And that's actually what I decide to do. Reason being is because if I go Bora attack direct into his Grepher, so now I have a read that his monster is a Raikou because it wasn't flipped last turn. When my opponent flips Raikou, he can Raikou and freely pop my Icarus and becomes a dead card. So I set Icarus and I pass, and on his draw phase, as planned, I tribute the Bora and take out his Hamster, which was unexpected, and his Dark Grepher. He summons Sirocco, pumps, and runs over. So that's a really good play by Sam. And on my turn, I summon Blizzard. So if you look at my grave, I actually have 2 darks. And when I synchro here, I'll go into the 3rd dark. So I actually can do a very strong play. I can go Goyu into Dark Arm and attack direct with both for 56. But I choose not to do that play. Reason being is because it's not game. And it's not even enough to knock him outside of brain control range. So I decide to just chip at him and then save Dark Arm for the next turn when I can kill him. So I make Goyu Guardian, I attack here, and that brings my opponent's life points down 800, and I end my turn. Now, on Sam's turn, he draws into Vayu, and he goes normal summon Army Knight, send Plague, stack for Plague, make Brionic. And that actually is a game, because he's able to go Brionic, pitch the Vayu in his hand, and it didn't even need to be a Vayu in his hand because he already had one in his grave. But pitch the Vayu in his hand, return the Sirocco back to his hand, activate Brio's effect again to pitch the Goyu back to the extra deck, pitch the Sirocco out of his hand to put Goyu back to the extra deck, banish, and that's 46. So very well played by Sam. So that brings us to game three. Now, game three, I opened up quite well. I'm very happy with this hand. And the reason why I set two here is because I want Sam to activate Heavy Storm. Actually, I want him. Because if he activates Heavy Storm, now my Icarus attack and Whirlwind are pretty much safe for the rest of the game. So I set these two back rows without even having to worry about Heavy Storm. And what Sam does is he sets three cards and a monster. So three back rows and a monster. And on my draw phase, he activates Dust Shoot. And that Dust Shoot really hurt because I drew into triple Icarus attack. Of course, Sam can see two. He doesn't know that I have the third, but I drew into triple Icarus attack. And my best play here was Whirlwind into Sirocco. So as long as Sam doesn't have Starlight Road, then like I pretty much win this. But by him sending back the Sirocco, now I'm forced to go Whirlwind Blizzard. Because if this is a hamster or a Raikou, things will quickly get out of hand. So that's exactly what I do. I go Whirlwind Blizzard, I search out the Vayu. I don't even bother to attack because there's no benefit of attacking. If it's Necro, then like it doesn't do anything. If it's Hamster, he gets a +1. If it's Raikou, he takes my Whirlwind. So there's just simply no advantage of attacking. So I think about what to do and activate Icarus. Now, in hindsight, this was a bit of a misplay because although activating Icarus is the right play here, what I should have did is set one of the Icaruses from my hand and then activate Icarus attack on his draw phase, because then Sam would still have no idea what this back row is here. But one of the reasons why I did it in this way was to slowly but surely safeguard against Heavy Storm. But nevertheless, it was a misplay, especially because, as you can see, if my opponent activates Heavy Storm, at this point, I still lose. Like, I'm not going to come back and win this game with double Icarus and a Vayu, right? Like, yes, I safeguarded against Heavy Storm by not setting another Icarus, but like, my hand is too weak. Fortunately for me, my opponent does not have Heavy Storm, but he knows I have double Icarus, so he sets a monster and he passes. So I draw for turn, I draw into Kalut, which is really good. Now I have a read that Sam actually has Solemn Judgment because he thought long and hard when I activated my previous Icarus attack. So I go summon Kalut, and he hits me with the Thinking Face and responds with Solemn Judgment, which I'm completely okay with. Because, think about it, what would I rather lose? Would I rather lose 2 cards to Icarus, or would I rather lose a normal summon to Icarus? And the answer is obvious, a normal summon. So here I get Solemn, and my opponent is able to flip up his Raikou and take out my Whirlwind, and this game is looking heavily in Sam's favor. Although he paid a lot with Solemn Judgment, he is in a great position, whereas I don't really have any monsters to capitalize on the situation. Now, one thing I would like to say though, cards like Solemn Judgment, I side these cards out against Black Wings and Vayu Turbo, because Black Wings and Vayu Turbos are such aggressive decks that they can easily put a lot of damage on the board, and bringing your life points down to 4,000 just makes their job that much easier. Anyway, he mills 3 here, he attacks direct for 200, I have Mirror Force, but I'm not going to Mirror Force a Raikou, so he sets a monster and he passes. So I have 2 choices, right? I can either summon Bora and attack, or I can set Vayu, set Icarus. Now, the reason why I ultimately go with setting Vayu and setting Icarus is because I didn't want to take the chance of that being the 3rd Raikou. But of course, since Sam saw my hand with Trap Dust Shoot, of course he's going to bait me into using my Icarus on a card that's not relevant, and that's exactly what he did. That was not a good Icarus because I took out a Necro Gardener and a Raikou. So it would have been better to just summon Bora and attack, but if I do that, then I lose to Caius. I go Bora, I attack over his Raikou, then he takes damage, and on his turn, he sacrificed Necro into Caius, and there's nothing I can do about that because he would only have 1 card on the field. So my opponent sets a monster and he passes, and I draw into Dark Arm with, you guessed it, 3 darks in the grave. Daddy is home. Daddy is definitely home. So that's what I do. I special summon Dark Arm. I know summon Blizzard. I hit his his monster. I attack with both. It's not game because my opponent has Necro. But look here. Necro also happens to be the last dark in his grave. He draws into Heavy Storm. He plays Heavy Storm, clears my back rows. There's nothing I can do about that. And his hand is Chaos Sorcerer which he can't summon due to no darks, and D-Prison, which also doesn't do anything because I have 2 darks in my grave with Dark Arm. So with that, Sam draws his next card and he just concedes. So with that, on to the next, round 7. Okay, so round 7. And this set is very important because the winner will proceed to go to top 8 on the loser side of RBET rulers. Now, for those of you who are unaware, Turna has his own YouTube channel, so please check it out if you're not already subscribed. And Turna is also the Italian national champion. He is a very proficient Value Turbo player, but above all else, he's also my teammate, another member of Perfect Circle. So no matter who wins or loses this set, then it's a loss for the team. Now Turna decides to set a card to each zone and pass. On my turn, I also do the same and I Icarus immediately because I know that he's on Value Turbo. So I'm able to hit a hamster and a bottomless, which is really good for me. And he summons Armageddonite, sends a Necro, attacks direct for 14. On my turn, I draw, summon Blizzard, and I bring back Bora. And I don't make a level 6. Reason being, if I make a level 6, it easily loses to bottomless or D-Prison, and I don't have much of a follow-up. Plus I have Icarus Attack. So Icarus Attack can be used with a Blackwing. So I attack, and my plan was if the attack goes through, I can actually activate Book of Moon. Now, because my opponent doesn't know what I have in my hand, there's also a chance my opponent can think that I have Qualoot. So I attack, my opponent thinks for a second, and he activates Necro. So I set Book, and I set Icarus, and I pass. He attacks, I activate Book to put it face down. That way I can run it over with Bora or Qualoot the following turn. My opponent sacks for Caius, which is perfect, because now I can go Icarus for attack and take out both of his cards. So he actually chooses to not activate Solemn, leaving the Blizzard up on the field. So I'm in a state where I need to put more aggression on the board. So I decide to summon Blizzard of my own, bring back Bora. Once again, I'm not making a level 6 because it would lose to so many different cards. And I'm not worried about my opponent summoning a Sirocco in this case because if he summons Sirocco and he pumps and he kills over anything, it's not a big deal. Let's say he kills over the Bora, then on my turn, I can summon Sirocco and I can make Armor Master. Let's say he kills over the Blizzard, well, I have another Blizzard, right? And the next turn I can make Goyu Guardian. So I'm not worried about him summoning Sirocco. So I attack direct with both, I set Torrential, and I pass. My opponent summons Armageddonite, sends Plague, and drops Dark Arm. Now, of course, Dark Arm, there's no answer to that. You never want to see Dark Arm, but it is what it is. So I flip up Torrential, I clear the board, and I draw Shura, which is great. But I don't summon it because now, if my opponent has a Sirocco, I don't have much of an out. Of course, on my turn, I could go summon Sirocco of my own and run over. But the main issue is Gores. Like I said, these days, Value Turbo decks are playing Gores. And when we look at his graveyard, there's no sign of a Gores. So I draw and I pass. My opponent sets a card to his zone. I summon the Shore out of my hand. He allows it to go through. It's Raikou. He mills 3, and now that I see Gores is gone, I don't have to worry about that anymore. I set Bottomless, and at this point, I'm feeling comfortable because he's already used a lot of steam from his deck. Dark Arm is gone. He does have the option to summon the Plague. However, I have Bottomless. So outside of a Burial, I'm in a very strong position. So he sets it back for when he passes. I summon Qualoot. I attempt to go for damage. He D-prisons. I pull D-prison of my own. And we are just in a draw pass game state. So he summons Grepher, and he goes Grepher, Pitch, Vayu, and Armwing. Once again, I'm not worried about this at all because I have Bottomless. So he'll summon a Bottomless, and that's exactly what happened. And I'm like, okay, I'm in a great position because I could go Whirlwind, Sirocco next turn, and set D-Prison. But unexpectedly, he goes Burial, and I was like, okay, that's unfortunate. That's one of the cards that I lose to. But it's still not the end of the world because I have enough life points to take both. But he also summons Chaos Sorcerer. So I was just like, where did all of this damage come from? But thankfully, if you do the math, it's 65 and I'm at 66. So I just take all points of damage and I'll drop down to 100. And I draw into Brain Control, which is crazy, you know? Of course, I could have set Deep Prison to turn prio to help mitigate some of this damage, but look at the game state. We were both in a draw pass game state. He hasn't used MST or Heavy Storm. So it doesn't make sense to commit so many back rows just to get destroyed. So I go for the only play that I have, which is Rowan Sirocco. He has bottomless, and from that point, I knew this game is already over. I set 2 back rows just in case Turna decides to fumble, but he doesn't. He pitches, he attacks, I deprison, he attacks again, and that's game 1. So very unfortunate for me, but it is what it is. Now game 2, I open up double Bora and Shura. So I lure and I get rid of one of the Boras, and my hand is not bad. It's definitely not bad. It's not the strongest hand, but it's not the weakest hand. So I think about what to do, and I'm like, okay, I'll summon Shura and I'll set deprison, because if my opponent goes summon Sirocco, then I can just deprison and get free damage. So that's exactly what I do. But he sets a monster and sets a back row and passes. And that puts me in a very awkward situation, because I've agreed that this monster is a hamster. So I think about, okay, well, it could be Raikou. So I special summon Bora and my opponent flips up bottomless. And this only further convinces me that his set monster is a hamster. So I have 2 different plays that I can make at this point. One play is I can go Shura attack. And if it's Raikou, the Raikou has to tap the Shura to stop me from plussing. Or I could go for the next play. Now the next play is quite over-committal, but it puts me in a good spot, assuming my opponent can't out my board. So I go Synchro into Brionic. And I think about what to pitch, and I decide to pitch bottomless, and I attack direct for 23. So now my opponent's life points are at 57. So for Vayu Turbo to out Brionic, it's not hard. It's definitely not hard. There are a number of ways that they can out Brionic. They can out Brionic with Armageddonite, because that sends plays to the grave, and then they can make a Brionic of themselves by stacking a card, or make Goyu Guardian. They can also out Brionic by going Greffer, pitch, Vayu Sirocco, and then making Armwing. There are many ways that they can out Brionic. However, let's look at the current game state. If my opponent goes for the most convenient way to out Brionic, which is summon Greffer, pitch Vayu Sirocco, then attack, I can respond with Dimensional Prison. And then I'll have on my board Brionic. I could go Brain Control as Greffer, that's 4,000. Greffer pitch Sirocco, send Vayu in my grave, and then attack for 23. So that's 2,000, 4,000, 23. And if my opponent sets any back rows, then I can return it to the hand with Brionic. So it's game. Basically, if my opponent tries to out this Brionic, he will lose to Brain Control and his own Greffer. And I've agreed my opponent does not have any spell and trap removal, because the turn prior, when I had Shura in a back row, he didn't destroy the back row. And he chose to set a card to each zone. And the reason why this is so important is because you do not want to play into Icarus attack. So if my opponent had a way to remove a spell or a trap, then he would have played it before setting a card to each zone. So I'm thinking, all right, my opponent can't out this Brio without overcommitting. If my opponent overcommits, he loses to Brain Control. So I'm going to go for this play. And my opponent draws for turn, MST. So my entire plan got thrown out the window, because now he does the exact same play that I talked about. The only difference is he has MST. So because he has MST, now he gets rid of the deep prison. He goes, like I said, summon Greffer. He pitches. This is the easiest way for them to out Brionic. And he goes crashes here. And I draw for turn. I take 17. And I draw for turn, and I draw into Deck Devi. Once again, so let's just assume my opponent didn't draw MST off the top. Then on my turn, I go Brain Control, his Greffer. Before Brain Control, activate Brio effect, pitch Deck Devi, return this. It's a return. He's not going to chain return. And then Brain Control is Greffer, pitch Sirocco, send Vayu, all attack in, game. But, I mean, he drew MST off the top, so there's nothing else that I can say about that. So I Brain Control here. I attack to attempt to big out his back row. He does nothing. I set Sirocco in order to play around bottomless, and I set Deck Devi. And I activate Deck Devi immediately, and I can see what my opponent has. He has Dark Arm and an unknown back row. So I'm like, all right, well, if this Dark Arm drops, I'm going to lose. He has two Darks in the grave, thankfully, so he can't drop Dark Arm. So I draw for turn, and I draw into Icarus. So no point in setting Icarus. And my opponent draws into the third Dark, which is Vayu. And it's so crazy because it could have been any Dark, to be honest. It could have even been Armageddonite. But the fact that it was Vayu kind of just added like insult to injury. Because now my opponent just simply has game. So what he's able to do is, first of all, Vayu dies because of Deck Devi. He special summons Dark Arm. That's three darks, and he banishes both for Armor Master rather, activates Return, and brings back his guys, and that's game. So well played by Turna. Definitely a series of unfortunate luck on my end. Unfortunate that he drew the MST, and then unfortunate he drew the third dark. Like I said, it could have been any dark. It didn't have to be Vayu, because even if he drew, like, let's say, an Armageddonite, Turner's a very good player, so I'm sure he would have solved this play. But then Armageddonite goes to the grave. That's the third dark. Special summon Dark Arm. Activate Dark Arm's effect. Banish the Armageddonite. And then chain return. So banishing is a call, so he's actually able to bring out the Armageddonite that he just banished. So now his return will bring back Armageddonite and this Sirocco. Not to mention when Armageddonite is summoned, he'll be able to send a Vayu or Sirocco. So it still would have been game. But assuming that he drew any other card that wasn't the third dark, look at, I mean, Turna's life points would have been much higher. He would have been at 4,000 because of he would not have activated return. But then I would have drew Dark Arm, right? And in my graveyard, I also have three darks. So special summon Dark Arm, take out his return. That's his win condition. And then like there's still a chance that he's able to drop Dark Arm like in the future, but I don't lose immediately. Anyway, it was definitely a really good set against Turna. Once again, if I had to lose to anyone, it'd rather be a teammate. And with that, he was able to make top 8. And that's the tournament run. So your boy wasn't able to make top 8 at this event. I thank you for everyone who stayed into the end of this video, who's been supporting me throughout all the videos that I made. I hope that this can help you guys, whether you play Black Wings, Diva Hero, or anything, just become a better duelist. So with that said, guys, a true hero out, and until the next time, peace.
Subscribe or you too will be sent to the Shadow Realm.